You blink against the sting of dry wind, sand swirling into every inch of your dignity. Welcome to northern Mesopotamia, where your sandals are caked in dust before you even take a step, and the sun is less gentle warmth of dawn and more molten coin from the gods hurled directly at your face. Around 1500 BCE, the world doesn't know you exist yet. Neither does your empire. But give it a moment. You're standing in a land that hasn't yet been scribbled into the margins of Babylon's records or sketched on Egyptian walls. You're surrounded by wide plains, scattered trees, and the scent of recent rain over baked earth, a temporary gift, courtesy of some bored, hurrying weather deity who accidentally pressed the sprinkle button. To your left, a cluster of mud brick houses, squat, rectangular, and about as heat-proof as a stale pita. To your right, a smoking fire pit where last night's lamb is still pretending it wasn't burned beyond salvation. And in front of you, movement. Dozens of young men, bare-chested and dust-streaked, drag cart-sized wooden frames into position. Behind them, wheels as tall as you, wooden rims wrapped in leather, creaking like elderly gods. Horses sleek, muscular, snorting with a kind of attitude that says, yes, I know I'm expensive stamp at the ground. Chariots, not your clunky Egyptian ride with 2 wheels and a bad attitude. No, this is early Mitanni tech. Lightweight, nimble, terrifying. The sports car of the late Bronze Age. And you are about to help build the empire that strapped arrows to these things and rewrote warfare with a swift kick from a horse. But let's rewind. So, who the flaming fake is Mitanni? No one's quite sure how you got here. You're hurrying, mostly. That means your ancestors probably migrated down from the Caucasus like. What if we built a kingdom where the sun tries to kill you every day? You've got a language no one else can really understand. A religion that borrows gods the way your cousin borrows tunics, and never gives them back, and you ride horses like they owe you money. Your neighbors? Oh, just minor names like Babylon to the south, Egypt to the west, the Hittites up north, and the rising rumble of Assyria down the street. And between all those screaming kids of history, you're the middle child, forgotten, overlooked, and about to slap them all with a cavalry unit. Life as a not yet empire. Your capital isn't even official yet, but the city of Washkani is starting to hum. It's somewhere between the Kabul and Euphrates rivers, though don't bother looking it up on Google Maps. Archaeologists still haven't found it. Like a responsible ghost, Mitanni left barely a forwarding address. In Washkani, there's a palace, or at least what passes for one, multiple courtyards, a half-working drainage system, and frescoes of men holding swords and looking very proud of their calves. You, however, live in a house with a reed roof and a goat named Tsip Tsip, who hasn't stopped screaming since sunrise. Your uncle works with bronze. Your cousin trains horses. And your job? You're a scribe in training. Congrats. You now understand cuneiform, the most complicated way humans ever invented to say, hey, got your tax payment? You kneel on clay, stylus in hand, and scratch out syllables that'll be baked into bricks. last longer than your entire bloodline. Kings may fall, but your awkward spelling mistake of chariot inventory. Third month will endure in a museum. Mitanni isn't about riding, it's about riding. The chariot obsession begins. Here's the deal. Most kingdoms treat horses like decorative meat with hooves. Not Mitanni. You practically worship them. Your nobles have started keeping breeding records, naming bloodlines, and using horses like other people use politics. Fast, risky, and better with armor. Your generals are experimenting with yokes, axles, and suspension. They're shaving off weight, widening wheels, testing aero launching stability at full gallop. You're creating the Formula One of antiquity, and the world hasn't even caught up. You're gods. You've got Teshab, storm god extraordinaire, Shaushka, the gender-fluid war and love deity, and then the Vedic gang shows up. Yeah, someone in the royal family decided to hire Indo-Aryan horse whisperers from the Iranian plateau. These folks show up with Sanskrit prayers, horse sacrifices, and the kind of horsemanship that would make Zeus insecure. And the weirdest part, it works. Suddenly, your treaties start invoking Mitra and Varuna. Your royal family learns how to pronounce things that would give modern linguists a stroke. And your army, it starts thundering through the plains with the swagger of 20 stallions and a really good soundtrack. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the drama, Egypt's over there, tanning and constructing pyramids. They'll later pretend aliens built. The Hittites are punching rocks and yelling about territory. Babylon is quoting Hammurabi like it's still relevant. And Assyria? They're quiet. Too quiet. But not your problem. Not yet. Right now, your king, let's say he's Kurta, is consolidating tribes, bribing nobles, and marrying daughters to anyone with a crown and a halfway decent army. He's a charmer. Also, possibly a war criminal. But hey, it's the late Bronze Age. You're summoned to the palace. You wipe clay off your tunic, curse your sandals, and try not to trip over. Sip, sip. The palace smells like oil, wine, and power. You pass guards with spears, courtiers with peacock feather fans, and one man who seems to be arguing with a vase. Inside the throne room, murals of chariot races, storm gods, and deer that look suspiciously like confused goats. The king sits on a platform, flanked by scribes and warriors. His crown is tall. His beard is taller. He gestures at you. You, he says, will learn to write the names of kings who kneel. And just like that, you're official. A nation starts whispering. Mitanni isn't shouting yet. It's not Babylon with its booming ziggurats or Egypt with its international god, PRDO. No, Mitanni is a quiet storm, gathering dust and teeth. But something's shifting. Treaties are being signed. Borders are being drawn. Gold is moving. So are weapons. You watch it unfold from clay tablets and caravan gossip. You're there when the first diplomats arrive in robes so clean they must be lying about something. You're there when the stables double in size. You're there when the first map is carved and Mitanni is finally labeled. You blink again. The sun's still furious. The wind hasn't let up. But now, when you walk through the city, people talk about you. Not you personally, but the empire you're becoming. They say, we trade with Pharaoh now. They say, even Babylon sends messengers. They say, our horses can outrun death. And for once in human history, they're almost right. You wake up to the sound of hooves, and not the soft, dreamy kind that might suggest an elfin forest romp. No, this is rhythmic, thunderous, real hooves, clattering against stone, squelching in mud, snorting like someone offended their oats. Your head jerks up from the woven mat, drool stringing between your cheek, and a very suspicious patch of fabric that may or may not have been washed since the last eclipse. Tip, tip, the goat is staring at you, clearly judging. It's another day in the rising heart of Mitanni, and you, dear scribe, are no longer just a passive record keeper of dusty royal errands and overcomplicated grey ledgers. No, today you've been handpicked by the palace to observe the noble art of horsemanship, which in King speak translates roughly to. You're about to eat sand for breakfast. Congratulations. You've been drafted into the Cavalry Academy. You squint into the sun, barely digesting your breakfast, half a fig, some barley mush, and a mosquito you didn't invite, and trudge across the training fields. There's already a commotion the kind only possible when combining 20 over-caffeinated horses, a dozen ambitious teenagers with swords too big for their arms, and one extremely loud man with a beard that seems to scream on its own. Meet Lord Château Mitannis, High Marshal of Horse. His voice sounds like someone tied a thunderstorm to a megaphone and insulted your posture in hurry. You stick. You grip reins like they're your grandmother's shawl. Stronger. You nod in solidarity with Stick, a gangly noble's son who's probably never gripped anything stronger than a fig. Château spots you and grins. Not a nice grin. The kind that says, you're going to fall off something tall, and I'm going to enjoy it. The royal scribe, here to write poems about how we sweat. He tosses a rope toward you. It's attached to a horse so muscled, it looks like it's sculpted from anger and revenge. Meet Tutu. He bites. Your crash course in horse logic. Let's be clear. Horses in Mitanni aren't pets. They're sacred weapons with attitude issues. You learn this the hard way when Tutu immediately drags you 10 feet across the yard because a bee flew past his ear. Lesson 1. Mitanni horses don't spook, they attack. Lesson 2. Don't let go. Ever. Lesson 3. Château is laughing. You stagger upright, now covered in a mud that smells like old cheese and battle trauma. Stick offers you a cloth. You decline. Pride must survive where your dignity cannot. But the training continues. Day after day, from sunrise until your thighs scream like betrayed friends. You learn how to move with a horse, not on a horse with one. You learn the difference between the trot and the war trot. You learn how to fire an arrow while turning. You learn how to not die when the chariot turns too fast, flips and buries you in a perfect sculpture of pain. You sleep under the stars now. You snore next to saddles. You dream of rains. You sweat so much that your tunic achieves sentience, and slowly, miraculously, you stop falling off. Meanwhile, in palace news, back in Washkani, your king, Kurta, is making moves, not metaphorically actual moves, like sending messengers to Egypt with tribute and passive-aggressive letters, or drafting treaties with Assyria that say things like, "We're friends, right?" while quietly arming border forts with sharp, pointy arguments. There are rumors. There's a wedding coming, an Egyptian princess, maybe, or one of Kirta's daughters being bartered off like a particularly well-groomed dowry receipt. You're barely paying attention, because now you ride. You've passed Shatalu's trials. You've survived his insults. And most importantly, you and Chutu no longer want to murder each other. You're assigned to a chariot unit. It's not glamorous. The wheels still squeak. The axle splinters if you hit a rock wrong. And your partner, an archer named Shuru, spits too much. But it's yours. And now you're part of the weapon that will make Mitanni famous. The chariot code. The chariot unit isn't just a job, it's a status symbol. You're not infantry. You're a mobile god of chaos. A fast-moving, arrow-spitting. Two-wheeled middle finger to the slow-footed armies of yesterday. Training turns brutal. You're riding on narrow trails, past cliffs, through burning heat and pelting rain. You practice formation, riding circular death vortex, Shatalu calls it, with dizzying turns and synchronized strikes. And once a week, they bring in the nobles to watch. They sit on shaded platforms, fanning themselves with ivory-stemmed plumes, sipping watered wine, and pretending they understand what happens when 2 tons of horseflesh and velocity meet a line of archers. You don't look at them, you look ahead, because this week you're showing off the latest maneuver. The Whispering Arrow, a triple speed formation, in which 3 chariots fan out, fire in turns, and regroup before the dust even settles. You ride it like a poem. Chutulungus forward. Shuru yells. You loose the signal. The formation flies. And when you slow down, sweat-soaked, heart pounding, and lungs dragging air like it's debt, you hear it. Applause. And a royal voice. Who trained that unit? Shatalu doesn't answer. He just nods at you. The deal with horse treaties. While you're bruising your ribs and becoming a blur of horsepower, Mitanni's king is engaging in what ancient historians lovingly refer to as strategic chaos. See, when your military is scary, but your neighbors have more temples than you have bathhouses, you start playing smart. You make horse treaties. A letter goes out to Egypt, not in Hurrian, not even in Akkadian, but in the ceremonial language of diplomacy. I am your brother. May your gods shine upon your cattle. That's ancient talk, for we both hate the Hittites. Let's hang out. Egypt replies, brother, here is gold. Also, do you want another daughter? She's polite and only poisons people sometimes. Suddenly, There's an alliance. Pharaoh gets war horses. Mitanni gets gold and international relevance. You're sitting in the palace courtyard one night, bruised and bandaged, when the shipment of Egyptian gifts arrives. There's lapis lazuli, alabaster vases, fine linen, and in a gilded chest, papyrus scrolls. With poetry, you try reading one aloud. It's about the sun god's rays falling on the Nile. Tip, tip, poops on it. Power has a smell, and it's horse sweat. You're summoned again, not to the training grounds, to the inner sanctum of the royal scribes. There, beneath vaulted ceilings, painted with lotus flowers and mythical beasts that look like lions who made bad life choices, sits an older man with ink-stained fingers. He's the Sakamar royal vizier, head scribe, trusted advisor to King Kurta. You've proven you can ride, he says. Now prove you can remember. You're being promoted. Not just a rider, not just a scribe. You're to be the royal historian of the chariot corps. Your job? Record every campaign, every battle, every alliance signed with a horse tied nearby. And you say yes, even though your back aches and your tunic is more bandage than fabric, because this is his history, not the dusty, boring kind, the thundering time, the kind pulled by horses. And then the dust rises, word spreads. Assyria's starting to make noise. Babylon is cranky. The Hittites are flexing their borders again. But Mitanni has chariots. And Mitanni has you, the sand-soaked, arrow-dodging, ink-smudged memory keeper of an empire that was once just a whisper between two rivers. You walk outside, Chutu whinnies. You don't know it yet, but you're about to ride into a world war that history will almost forget, except for a few cracked tablets, the shape of a hoofprint fossilized in clay, and the soft echo of wheels turning beneath the storm. Let's not be dramatic. Okay, no, let's absolutely be dramatic. Because right now, you're clutching the sides of a chariot that's hurtling across the northern plains of Mesopotamia at a speed somewhere between mildly suicidal and Olympic regret. The wind is peeling your eyes open. The reins are like fire in your palms, and Shuru, your eternally spitting archer companion, is whooping like he just invented war itself. This isn't training anymore. This is war. Actual, real, sand in your eyes, arrow in your ribs warfare. And you're in the front row. The war nobody expected. Except everyone did. Here's the backstory you didn't get time to write down. The Hittites, eternal fans of my now diplomacy, have started poking their oversized spears into territory a little too close to Mitanni comfort. Specifically, they've begun edging toward Aleppo. Yes, that Aleppo. Back then, it was a major trade hub. Now it's a glowing prize that everyone wants, but no one can peacefully have, sort of like the Bronze Age version of oil rights. Mitanni can't let that go, not when the wine route runs through it. So the king, now Tashrata long live that name, and his 70-letter correspondence style, mobilizes the chariot corps. And glorified scribe turned semi-accidental war correspondent, are conscripted not just to record the battle, but to ride in it. Because nothing screams accurate history like first-person accounts from people actively being shot at, gearing up for chaos. Back in Washkani, the mood is shifting. Gone are the lazy banquets and passive-aggressive poetry contests. The forges blaze from sunrise to starlight. Chariot wheels are reinforced with bronze clamps, and horses are groomed with more care than royal children. Your chariot is overhauled, tighter axle, lighter frame, new leather wrap on the reins that, while smelling like demon breath, at least stops it from cutting your skin open. Your armor is upgraded too. You now wear a bronze-studded vest that offers roughly the same protection as a slightly annoyed duck, but looks great in murals. The priesthoods chant over the wheels. The horses are anointed with oils. The army gathers on the edge of the plains, 100 chariots strong. This is not a village raid. This is Mitanni's moon. And you're standing in the middle of it with a stylus tucked inside your tunic and a stomach doing pirouettes. First blood. Welcome to Aleppo. The sun hasn't risen yet. The sky is still the color of old bruises, and that's when the horn sounds a low, guttural roar that means mount up and maybe die gloriously. You clamber aboard, gripping the edge of your chariot, heart jackhammering in your throat. Shuru gives you a thumbs up, and not one, but 2 daggers tucked into his sash. He's clearly having the time of his life. The horses paw the earth. They can feel it too. Then you move. A wave of Mitanni chariots flows across the field, like the god Teshub himself flicked his finger. Dust kicks up so fast, it creates its own weather. Ahead, in the haze movement, enemy lines, banners, spears glinting like a field of metal flowers that hate you. Shuru looses the first arrow. Before you even see what he's aiming at, the science of screaming. At 49, let's talk about what this actually feels like. You're bouncing violently, like trying to write a haiku on a mechanical bull. Every bump sends a jolt up your spine. The reins vibrate with raw muscle. Your hands are numb from holding on. The wheel creaks like an ancient complaint. Then, over the ridge, there they are. Hittite infantry, shields raised, archers in the back, and a handful of their own chariots, heavier, clumsier, and entirely unprepared for what's coming. Shuru yells. You pivot. The entire formation turns like a flock of angry metal birds. You flank. You fire. Arrows slice through the wind. You don't aim. You feel. You let loose and pray that the gods don't treat you like a joke today. Your arrow lands somewhere. Possibly in someone. Probably not fatally. But the message is clear. Mitanni's here. And we brought speed. What makes a Mitanni chariot so deadly? 3 things. 1. The horses. Mitanni horses are fast, strong and bred with the kind of care normally reserved for sacred artifacts or emotionally damaged cats. They don't flinch. They choose violence. 2. The construction. Your chariot is light. turns like a thought. It was built to skim across desert crust like a skipping stone across water. 3. The teamwork. You and Shuru are a machine. He reads the wind. You read the ground. When you veer left, he already knows. When he knocks 3 arrows in 5 seconds, you time the acceleration. It's ballet. If ballet had a body count. Victory is ugly. The battle doesn't last hours. It lasts moments, because that's what Mitanni does now. Shock and vanish. Strike like thunder. Disappear like smoke. The Hittite lines break. You hear screaming in Hurrian and Hittite and something that's probably just profanity. The enemy runs. The horses slow. The dust settles. You're alive. Your tunic is torn. Your arm is bruised. And your mouth tastes like copper and regret, but you're alive. You turn to Shuru. He's grim. Best Tuesday ever, he says. Rooting for history and the gods. You ride back that night under a moon fat with victory. The wounded are tended, the dead buried, and the surviving horses fed like royalty. You bleeding from your wrist and covered in what you hope is not someone else's blood, kneel in the temple of Teshub with a wax tablet and begin to write. You write the names of the fallen, the orders given, the turn of the tide. You sketch the arrow formation that worked. You record the prayer whispered by the captain before the charge. You mention the moment a horse slipped but didn't fall, and how its rider swore it was the gods holding them up. This isn't epic poetry. This is lived truth. You're not Homer. You're the one who hands Homer the receipts. The aftermath smells like burnt bronze. 2 days later, you're back in Washkani, and it's like someone slapped the palace with a party stick. There are banners, musicians, so much wine you suspect someone invented a vineyard just for this. The king appears on a gilded platform, wearing robes so embroidered they probably have their own postal code. He praises the troops. He honors the chariot corps. He singles out one particular scribe warrior hybrid for bravery and detail. That's you. But you bow awkwardly, knee still sore, ink still under your fingernails. Your reward, a new tunic, a gold pendant, and 3 scrolls imported from Egypt. Dot on them, blank pages. Fill them, says Toshrata, with stories that make gods jealous. No pressure, but trouble, as always, is brewing, because if Mitanni has taught you anything, it's this. Victories echo, but so do footsteps. The Hittites are humiliated, but not finished. Assyria, that quiet neighbor with the passive-aggressive ziggurats, is getting twitchy. Babylon just stopped responding to messages. And Egypt? Egypt's suddenly very interested in who's winning out east. They're sending more letters and orders. The world is shifting again. But you're ready. Your chariot is repaired. Your stylus is sharp. Your story has only just begun. You wake up with a scroll stuck to your face and the faint aroma of last night's overcooked goat lingering in your nostrils. Outside, Hoshkani is waking too, if by waking we mean groaning. stretching and preparing to lie to itself about how organized it is. Chickens dart across the alleys like feathery thieves, and somewhere nearby, someone is yelling about stolen olives with the conviction of a man whose day has already peaked. You stretch, rub your eyes, and remember, you have a meeting with the gods. Okay, not the actual gods, but the people who speak on their behalf, argue over their schedules, and charge for sacrifices like divine concert promoters. Yes, we're talking about the priests, because today you're diving into one of Mitanni's greatest mysteries and best party tricks: how to rent a pantheon. Welcome to the divine timeshare. Mitanni, for all its horse charging, arrow-flinging testosterone, has one spiritual quirk no one talks about at parties. Your gods are kind of imported. Imported? You started off, Hurrian, good, solid mountain folk gods. Teshub the storm wielder. Shashka the spicy gender-fluid war and love hybrid. And Kumarbi, who's basically the Mesopotamian version of dad issues, the deity. But then things got complicated. See, your royal family, eager to add a little exotic flair to their resume, started borrowing gods from the Indo-Aryans. Yes, the horse lords of the Iranian plateau. The same folks who brought Sanskrit chants, horse sacrifices, and a flair for cosmic order like the universe, is one big tax document. They didn't just visit, they nested. Suddenly, Mitanni treaties, especially the international pleas, don't stab us yet, kind start invoking names like Mitra, Varuna, Indra, and Nasatya. These aren't Hurrian deities. These are full on Vedic power players. In short, your kingdom became the theological version of a fusion restaurant. Would you like your storm god with a side of reincarnation and cosmic justice? The royal religion buffet. You arrive at the temple compound, less holy sanctuary and more organized chaos with incense. Priests in dyed robes dart between altars. Goats bleat nervously, and someone is waving a bronze censer like they're trying to win an Olympic event in smoke management. A senior priest, robes embroidered with storm symbols, and what might be a confused giraffe, greets you. Scribe of the chariot, he intones. Come. The gods are awake. You're ushered inside a hall painted with scenes of divine battles, flying bulls, and deities, dramatically pointing at stars like they just invented astrology. Here's the thing. The Hurrian gods are loud. Their myths read like family soap operas with better weapon. Storms, betrayal, cosmic castration, it's all there. But the Vedic gods, oh, they're precise. These guys come with manuals. You observe the duality firsthand. One altar hosts Teshub, with offerings of wine and roasted meat. Next to it, a smaller shrine to Mitra and Varuna, guardians of oaths and universal order, complete with rice, clarified butter, and a priest chanting in a rhythm so hypnotic you nearly float out of your sandal. Why rent gods anyway? Simple diplomacy. Mitanni isn't Babylon. You don't have a script-covered tower that touches the clouds or priests with enough political clout to cancel kings. You need leverage, spiritual leverage. By invoking Mitra and Varuna in treaties, especially with foreign powers, you signal two things. Look, we're cosmopolitan. We even have imported deities. Break this deal, and you're not just crossing us, you're violating cosmic law. Good luck with that karma. It works. Egypt notices. Hittites raise eyebrows. Assyria grinds its teeth. Suddenly, your treaties have weight like divine restraining orders. And the best part? You can still worship Teshub on weekends. Nobody minds. The Egyptian complication. While your gods are playing musical altars, Egypt slides into the picture with the subtlety of a hippo on a skateboard. Pharaoh Amenhotep III, wearing more eyeliner than your entire priesthood combined, has responded to your king's last letter. Not with swords, with gifts, gold, lapis, rare animals, perfume so strong they make grown generals weep. And oh yes, a princess. You're summoned to the diplomatic chamber. The air smells like frankincense and negotiations. The king reclines on a low platform, toying with a pomegranate and trying to look like he didn't practice this pose all morning. He nods at you. Translate the letter, he says. You unroll the papyrus, squint at the Egyptian glyphs, some of which appear to be passive-aggressive birds, and begin. To my brother Tushrata, great king of Mitanni, rider of swift horses, drinker of pure waters, wearer of nice sandals. Okay, you paraphrase. It's polite, it's filled with flattery, and then casually dropped in like a garnish. We accept the marriage alliance. Princess Kilukipa sails at dawn. You blink. Kilukipa, she's not just some court beauty they're sending actual royalty. That's diplomacy speak for. We see you as a threat, and we'd like you to be a family threat. And your God, they're now Egypt's in-laws. Divine co-parenting and cultural chaos. Let's recap. Your royal family now invokes Hurrian, Vedic and Egyptian deities. You've got ceremonies where storm gods are asked to bless sun gods, and treaties that end with both. So let Teshub strike me down, and may Ra witness my truth. It's messy, but it's working. Mitanni is the center of a weirdly effective religious Venn diagram. You've become the Bronze Age Switzerland of spirituality. Neutral, flexible, and suspiciously well-funded. Your palace now hosts emissaries from everywhere: Babylonian astrologers, Egyptian scribes, even the occasional Hittite merchant pretending not to be a spy. They debate theology, swap incense, and argue about whether Shoshka counts as one goddess, or two, depending on her mood. And you're recording it all. Your scrolls are filling with notes like New Vedic chant introduced to Mitanni rites, Shashka invoked in fertility and vengeance ritual. Slight overlap. Temple architect insists on combining lion statues with lotus columns. Result, terrifying flower cats. The human side of gods on loan. Late one evening, you find yourself in a courtyard lit by oil lamps. Shuru joins you, still limping from training, hair filled with dust, but somehow holding 2 cups of wine. He hands you one. You nod. You ever wonder, he says, whose gods are real? You shrug. They all are, or none. He laughs. You should be a priest. You laugh back. I've seen too many priests get slapped. You both sit in silence, because in the end, that's the real trick of Mitanni. It's not about who's right, it's about who survives. And sometimes, survival means inviting every god to the table, even if they hate each other, and hoping nobody flips it over. Final blessings, for now. The city breathes, the borders hold, the horses sleep, the scrolls dry. Mitanni stands tall, not by brute force alone, but by clever borrowing, cultural glue, and the kind of flexible piety that would make modern theologians scream into a scroll. And you dip your stylus in ink, whisper a prayer to all the gods, and write. Today, the gods sat together, and no one exploded. That counts as peace. You've been invited to a party, not just any party, a Mitanni royal banquet, which is less dinner with friends and more drunken international summit, where people try not to stab each other with appetizers. You're told to bathe, which is code for try to smell less like horse, and wear your best tunic, the one without ink stains and only 2 visible burn marks. You tuck your stylus behind your ear because, despite your recent chariot career, you're still the scribe, which means your job tonight is part historian, part translator, and part make sure the king doesn't accidentally marry someone twice. Setting the table and the stage, you arrive at the palace courtyard just as the sun dips low, painting everything in gold, like some show-off deity just discovered filters. The space is transformed. Silk banners flap in the breeze. Torches line the walls, and low tables groan under the weight of meats, fruits, wine jars, and at least one questionable seafood platter that's clearly traveled too far. In nobles in embroidered robes mingle with foreign emissaries. You spot a Babylonian with a beard so long it's tied in knots like a decorative pretzel. There's an Egyptian priest trying to explain the concept of scarabs to a Hittite general who looks like he wants to die. Musicians strum lyres, dancers sway. Somewhere, a goat escapes its handler and is now galloping through the dessert table like a sugar-fueled comet. You take your seat, technically not at the main table, but close enough to hear the juicy stuff. The king arrives. Tushrata is dressed to intimidate in gold-threaded robes, a crown that could double as a weapon, and the expression of a man who's fully aware he has both gods and chariots on speed dial. He raises a cup, and that's your cue. what you're really toasting to. You translate the king's words into Akkadian, the diplomatic language everyone pretends they speak fluently, but secretly hope there's a scribe nearby high. That's you. He toasts to the alliances with Egypt, sealed in both wine and matrimony, to the loyalty of the noble houses, even the ones who occasionally try to poison each other. You pause at that line. To the gods, all of them, even the ones who don't get along but are here because diplomacy demands it. And to the chariot corps, the thunder of Mitanni's will, which earns you and Shuru a brief nod and several envious glares. Cups clink, wine flows. The political theater begins. Bloodlines and bronze faces. Next to you is Lord Ishuanda, a nobleman with eyebrows so large they deserve their own census. He leans in. You know, he says, swirling his wine. My son rode with the chariots last week. You nod politely. He fell off. You nod more awkwardly. And yet, you were praised. He smiles. It's the kind of smile you see on snakes before they shed. Across the table, the Egyptian envoy, freshly perfumed and fanned like a sun god, laughs too hard at a joke about sandstorms and camel dung. He's flirting with a Mitanni princess who's smiling in the universal language of diplomatic despair. You spot a Hittite merchant fingering the bronze cups, mentally calculating resale value. And at the main table, a new guest arrives, a priestess from Arazawa. She's veiled, mysterious, and possibly here to bless the trade deal you're pretending isn't just a veiled bribe. Welcome to Mitanni High Society, where every smile has at least 3 hidden daggers, and the wine isn't just fermented, it's weaponized. The games begin. By the second horse, the boasting begins. A Babylonian starts reciting his family's genealogy, which allegedly goes back to a god who invented beer. A Mitanni general counters with tales of killing 5 Hittites in a single charge. You were there. It was 2. One fell off his horse before the fight started. Someone from Alalak swears their king has a horse that speaks Hurrian. Nobody believes him, but everyone pretends to be impressed. Then comes the gift parade. Baskets of ivory, lapis, gold statuettes, even a trained monkey in a tiny vest, who promptly relieves himself on the foot of a foreign dignitary. Laughter erupts, but beneath it, you see the glances, the sidelong eyes, the whispered phrases, the quiet calculus of who's rising and who's vulnerable. Politics served warm and with figs. As the night stretches, the air thickens. Lord Ishuanda is now definitely drunk. He's trying to get the Hittite merchant to arm wrestle. You suspect this will end with a treaty or a broken table. You sneak away, not far, just to the edge of the courtyard, where the servants linger and the cool night offers a brief reprieve from the backstabbing heat of diplomacy. You find Shuru there, leaning against a pillar, chewing something unidentifiable. He nods. Fun night. You shrug. Half the people want peace. The other half want war. Nobody wants the chicken. He snorts. That's diplomacy. A servant walks past, carrying a tray of fruit so pristine It's clearly never been outside, and just for a moment, you wonder how long can this balance last. Blood in the bronze, because here's the truth you can't write in a scroll. Mitanni is powerful, respected, feared, even under, but it's built on sand and alliances. And alliances shift, especially when the people shaking hands today are the same ones who might draw swords tomorrow. You've heard whispers of internal rivalries, of vassals getting ambitious, of Assyria watching, always watching. And then there's the chariot core, your greatest weapon, but also your most expensive addiction. It eats resources, breeds arrogance, and worst of all, makes everyone think they're irreplaceable. You sigh. Your stylus is tucked behind your ear again. You pull it down. You scratch into your tablet. Tonight, we dined with gods and wolves. Some more gold, some more smiles. All brought knives. The final toast. You return to the banquet just in time to hear the king give his final toast. To Mitanni, he says, the chariot that roars and never turns. The guests cheer. You raise your cup. You drink. And you know, something is coming. You don't know what yet, but you can feel it in your bones, in the way the air trembles, in the way the stars seem to hold their breath. This is Mitanni at its peak, and peaks, historically, are very popular places to fall from. You are hunched over a clay tablet, stylus in hand, scribbling your 5th draft of a royal letter that is somehow supposed to communicate military strength, undying friendship, mild religious flattery, and also, if the wind is right, get a bunch of gold and perfume out of Egypt. In other words, it's Tuesday. Across from you sits the royal vizier, who is sighing so loudly it may qualify as a minor weather system. He wears the weary expression of a man who spent the last 3 hours arguing over whether Son of Kings sounds better than radiance of great kingliness. Welcome to the dazzlingly dull world of late Bronze Age diplomacy, the only place where you can accidentally cause a border war by forgetting to compliment someone's sandals. A letter is never just a letter. Let's clear this up right now. This isn't a letter like, "Hey bro, how's the Nile?" This is a tablet, a chunk of fired clay, etched with 100 tiny wedge-shaped arguments, each stroke a calculated diplomatic move. Every phrase is code, every title is a landmine, and this particular tablet is addressed to Amenhotep III, Pharaoh of Egypt, living god, lover of wine, and owner of more wigs than common sense. Why are you writing him? Because Mitanni and Egypt are currently in the greatest long-distance relationship of the Bronze Age. You're the horse-breeding, chariot-wielding, rising star of the North. He's the gold-hoarding sun-boy of the South. And you both really hate the Hittites. So you send letters. Not just once, not twice, dozens. You flatter, you flirt, you casually mention how strong your army is, and how fertile your sister is. You do everything but send a mixtape. Royal pickup lines. Circa 1350 BCE. Great king, my brother. You begin carefully. Why, brother? Because everyone wants to be Egypt's brother. Being Egypt's cousin is for amateurs. Being Egypt's son implies tribute. But brother, that means equals. You continue. May the gods of Mitanni and the gods of Egypt guard you with strong arms and steady breath. May your horses run swift and your enemies fall before your sandals. Solid start. Now comes the tricky part, the ask. You scroll through the king's verbal requests like a baker picking spices. We need gold. Also, lapis. Maybe some linen. Oh, and did you mention the last batch of perfume was lovely? But could it be more immortal next time? But you have to butter it up. So you write, as your humble brother longs for your face, so too does he long for the scent of your land, the gold of your hills, and the laughter of your daughters. Smooth, creepy, perfect. The Great Bride Exchange Program. Speaking of daughters, you don't just trade goods with Egypt. You trade people, specifically royal women. Your last package to Pharaoh included a carefully dressed, very diplomatic princess named Taduhepa, shipped with her own entourage, 27 ivory combs, and a prayer that she wouldn't trigger a scandal before the second harvest. And what did Mitanni get in return? Oh, a lot of shiny things, and the vague promise that maybe, someday, Egypt will send someone back. Maybe a daughter. Maybe a vase. It's unclear, but these marriages aren't about love. They're about leverage. You marry off your daughters to lock down treaties, secure trade routes, and make sure the other guy thinks twice before sacking your granaries. And if a few hearts get broken along the way, well, welcome to geopolitics, a palace of paper cuts and politics. You leave the vizier's chambers with inky fingers and the profound realization that your brain has become a repository for royal pleasantries. You pass through the halls of Washukhani, the capital, that still refuses to be found by modern archaeologists, and it's buzzing. Messengers run like startled lizards. Courtiers debate whether a treaty is more binding if it includes the words eternal sky. One servant is frantically polishing a lapis lion figurine as if it personally insulted his mother. Everything is theater. And you're in the writer's room. But not all letters go to Egypt. Some go east to Babylon, where the kings speak in riddles and demand tributes even when they're losing wars. Some go north to the Hittites, though those letters are shorter, colder, and mostly say things like "stop it," and "we saw what you did." And some go nowhere. Diplomatic decoys meant to confuse, distract, or waste someone's week. It's a strategy known as weaponized bureaucracy. You're a master now, interpreting the unsaid. The real trick of diplomacy, it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. For example, If Egypt sends 4 gold cups, that's friendship. If they send 3, it's a warning. If they send 5, someone is apologizing for something and hoping you didn't notice. You've become a connoisseur of subtext. One time, you spent 2 days analyzing whether "May the sun shine upon your house" was a genuine blessing or a veiled reference to the house of Teshub being recently damaged in a storm. It was both. Another time, a Babylonian king sent you a loaf of bread shaped like a horse. You still don't know what that meant. It's sitting in your quarters, growing something. Love, gold, and lies. Later that evening, you're summoned to a quieter chamber. The king is there, Tushrata, looking unusually human. Less thunder, more bone. He hands you a tablet. It's from Egypt. You read it. It's poetic, flowery, talks about the radiance of our alliance and how the gods of both lands dance together in harmony and then buried near the end. Almost an afterthought. We regret to inform you that Princess Nebet-hat has already been wed within our own court. Please accept instead a fine gift of incense and a painted ostrich egg. You lower the tablet. The king smiles without teeth. So, he says, they think us desperate. You say nothing, but you already know what this means. The balance is shifting. Egypt, once eager, is now aloof. The gold shipments are slowing. The flattery is thinning. And somewhere, probably behind several sandstone walls, Pharaoh is laughing into a cup of pomegranate wine. A new script. Back in your chamber, you begin to write. But not a letter this time. A report. Quiet. For the king's eyes only. You note the delays, the tone. You go. The missing gifts. You underline "wed within our own court" 3 times. Then you add a final line. Egypt remembers us, but not as we wish, not as equals, as something smaller. But you seal the tablet and sit in the dark, because diplomacy isn't always about success. Sometimes it's about documenting the moment the curtain starts to fall. And yet, tomorrow, Washani still sings, chariots still roll, priests still shout at cloud, and messengers still ride bearing your words, your clay, your symbols, to kings who may or may not read them, because Mitanni may not always win, but it never stays silent, and as long as your stylus moves, the world will remember. Even if it's just in love letters to people who stopped writing back. You're at another banquet. Yes, again, because nothing says our empire is stable like throwing glittery food orgies, while half your borders are quietly smoldering. But this one's different. There's a strange quiet beneath the music, a stiffness in the laughter, and the wine, it tastes cautious, like someone brewed it with side-eye. This is the smile and betray later type of event, the kind where people compliment each other's robes while mentally rewriting each other's wills. And you scribe, survivor, somewhat accidental diplomat are seated 2 cushions away from a man whose name recently appeared in a royal investigation labeled possible treason and known terrible poetry. You sip slowly, because the only thing more dangerous than Bronze Age warfare is court politics. Death by decoration. Let's talk about what you're seeing. The women here are painted in thick layers of coal and crimson, glittering like walking frescoes. Their eyes are lined with obsidian powder. Their smiles are sharp enough to cut bronze. They glide, not walk. They fan themselves with peacock feathers while whispering alliances like, "We should hunt together sometime," which translates roughly to, "I'd like to see your power base bleed." Nobles shift like lizards in silk, each one surrounded by advisors who coincidentally look like part-time assassins. And the servants, they float silently with trays of lamb, lentils, and something purple you suspect is either a dessert or a trap. In the center, King Tashrata reclines. Expression unreadable, cup half lifted in what might be a toast or a test. Poison is the new politics. You've been taking notes not just on paper, but on people. And here's what you've learned. If a noble's cup is always full, but he never drinks, he's watching. If he pours for you before you ask, he's testing. If he smiles too much, you should probably stop eating. Poison is the great equalizer in Mitanni. Unlike armies, it doesn't require borders or treaties, just patience, a grudge, and access to some very creative kitchen staff. There was Lord Arib Shena dead in his bed, wineglass still warm, lips purple as a river lotus. There was the ambassador from Kadesh, fell ill at a feast, bled from the eyes before dessert, and of course the infamous General Tudalia, who allegedly tripped on stairs and landed directly onto an unsheathed dagger 7 times. You call that a diplomatic coincidence. You get a threat, and you get a threat. The air grows thicker. You begin to pick out the coded barbs flying across the table. Lord Zarno, may the gods grant the king long life. His strength is unchanged. Translation: you look tired, old man. I'm planning something. Princess Kilu Heba. Your youngest son rides well. He reminds me of my late husband. Translation: is that kid even yours? The king simply nods. He's good at this. His face doesn't flinch, but his cup hasn't moved in over an hour. And you notice the taster at his side, the young one, sweating under torchlight, one eye always on the wine. That's how you know. Then just real tonight. You step into the storm. After dinner, the entertainment begins. Dancers from Alalak, veiled and swirling, with cymbals tied to their ankles. A flutist begins playing a haunting Hurrian melody, a hymn to Shashka, goddess of love and revenge. A good theme, you think, especially when both can happen within 5 minutes of each other. You step out onto the balcony to breathe. The view from Washani's palace stretches over endless plains, shimmering under moonlight like molten silk. Far in the distance, torches flicker near the training fields. Somewhere out there, horses are dreaming of war. Someone joins you. It's Lady Ninata, one of the Queen's cousins, and possibly, if rumors are true, the kind of person who uses hairpins for things other than hair. She leans in. "You don't drink much," she says. You smile. Right. Better with a clear head." She laughs, too loud, and "A long life." You don't respond, because that's the real game here. You don't speak threats aloud. You wrap them in perfume and poetry. The Scorpion Cup. You return to your quarters later that night and find it on your writing table. A cup, ornate, gilded, etched with the face of Teshub in storm mode. Beautiful. Inside, a folded scrap of papyrus, foreign and fragrant. It reads, "To the scribe who writes kings into memory, may your ink never run dry, and may your enemies drink first." There's no name, just a faint smudge of coal. You leave the cup untouched. Instead, you sit at your desk and begin your own letter. You write. You always write. Tonight, the wine was sweet, but the stairs were sweeter. Ding did not drink. The traitors did not blink. And I, the watcher with ink-stained hands, caught the shadow before it moved. You pause, then write another. Washkani stands, but the walls are whispering, because that's the truth no banquet can hide. There are cracks forming in the palace, invisible, but deep. Not all enemies wear armor. Some wear perfume, some wear smiles, some wear your family name. A final toast, unspoken. The moon is high when you finish. You stare at the cup on your desk, still untouched. Outside, the city sleeps, mostly. Inside the palace, someone is already planning the next feast, the next alliance, the next betrayal. And you sharpen your stylus, because poison fades, but words linger. You're standing ankle deep in mud, holding a tablet in one hand and a brick in the other, wondering how exactly you, a trained royal scribe, fluent in 5 languages and 7 types of flattery. Welcome to Infrastructure Week in Mitanni. Because while the diplomats are busy sipping wine and slipping poison, somebody has to actually build the empire. And that somebody is now, somehow, you. Empire is not a palace. Let's get something straight. Empires aren't made of gold. They're made of bricks, ditches, curses, and calluses. It's not the royal decree that makes a city. It's the 30 men hauling limestone blocks in 40-degree C heat while being yelled at by a foreman with a voice like a dying bull. You've been assigned to oversee logistics in a new administrative center near the Euphrates, which is king speak for we want our taxes faster and with less rebellion. You brought scrolls. You brought ink. You wore your nice sandals. That was a mistake. Mitanni urban planning. Mostly vibes. There is no blueprint. Your engineers, if we can call them that, operate on a system best described as stack stuff until it stops falling over. The city currently consists of 3 half-built storehouses shaped like sad cubes, a well that produces more mud than water. One extremely angry donkey that guards the grain rations like a divine artifact. You're given a team of 50 workers, most of whom have never seen a chariot up close, but can stack bricks faster than a scribe can say wait. That wasn't measured. You ask for measurements. They laugh. You ask for mortar. They hand you wet sand and shrug. You ask what the plan is. They point at the sky. Cool. Bare feet and brick dust. You give up on sandals by day. 3. The ground is a battlefield of rocks, pottery shards, and one extremely persistent thorn that seems to follow you from site to site. Your feet are now calloused, cracked, and officially part of the labor force. You learn quickly. Clay walls are best made before noon. Lime burns skin. Everyone lies about how much stone they've moved. You start bribing workers with dates. Not romantic ones, actual dates. The fruit. Turns out, it's better than gold. You befriend the cook, who can feed 60 men with 1 pot and a prayer. She gives you extra lentils if you fetch water. You fetch water. You forget to write anything for 3 days and panic when you realize the palace expects weekly progress reports. You improvise. The grain storage has taken root. Like a tree, it grows tall with time and sweat. Praise to Teshub, whose storms we fear more than collapsed scaffolding. It's total nonsense. They love it. Roads, taxes, and voluntary contributions. By the 2nd month, you've helped lay the first stones of a proper trade road, a rough, winding path that will eventually connect this muddy outpost to real cities. It's nothing fancy, just packed earth, crushed gravel, and the occasional offering to keep the carts from breaking an axle. But it works, and as soon as the road is visible from the horizon, merchants appear like flies at a funeral feast. They bring copper, tin, barley, beer, knives, dyes, wine, sheep, and gossip. Always gossip. You learn that Babylon is up to something. Egypt is ignoring us again. Assyria is building forts and pretending not to. You also learn that with every cart that rolls in, the taxman rolls up behind it. You are now responsible for organizing contributions to the crown. It's delicate work. Too harsh, and traders vanish. Too soft, and the palace starts asking why your ledgers look like bedtime stories. So you invent the weigh and wink system. Weigh their goods. Wink at the numbers. Record what the palace wants to hear. Skim a little for the workmen. Skim a little for you. Everyone's happy, except the donkey. But he's never happy. Building with words, not stone. You realize something odd. You've written more architecture than poetry these days. More grain tallies than war reports. Your tablets now record me, who laid the foundation for the southern wall. How many carts of timber arrived from Harran? Which mason got drunk and carved something obscene into a cornerstone? You maybe are rubbing it's hilarious. You're building something, not just physically, administratively, socially, culturally, because Mitanni is changing, expanding, and while generals roar and priests chant, it's the quiet thump of bare feet on brick floors that really makes this empire stand. A visit from the top. 3 months in, the king's envoy arrives, polished, perfumed, sitting sideways on a chariot like he's posing for a statue that hasn't been made yet. He tours the site. He sniffs the air. He steps around the donkey. He reads your reports. He nods once, and then says the words every bureaucrat longs to hear. The king is pleased. You don't cry, but you do immediately get a better tent, legacy in clay. Before leaving, you carve your name into a brick at the base of the granary. Not big, just small enough that no one notices unless they're looking. Because someday, someone will look at these walls and wonder who built them. And while your name may not be remembered in gold or song, it might survive in clay. That's the real magic of empire. Not the battles, not the gods, but the people who built it barefoot. You blink, you squint harder, because you're staring at a shipment of royal gifts from Babylon. And one of them is what appears to be a clay bull wearing earrings. The scribe who delivered it insists it's a religious icon. You're not so sure, but you nod, because Babylon has been weirded since Hammurabi's laws started collecting dust. And the last time someone mocked their religious art, they accidentally declared war on a goat cult, the Mesopotamianification of everything. Let's be honest, Mitanni used to be cool. Horse lords, Vedic whispers, hilltop shrines, storm gods with no vowels in their names. Now you're writing tablets in Akkadian, like a Mesopotamian intern with performance anxiety. You're measuring grain shipments with Babylonian math, which is basically regular math wearing a fancy hat. You've started calling your boss Shakanaku, even though you're 90% sure it just means guy with a chair. Welcome to cultural assimilation, the part of empire building where you wake up one day and realize half your identity has been quietly rebranded in cuneiform. Why is this happening? Simple. Trade, power, and bad writing. See, Mesopotamia is the bureaucratic black hole of the ancient world. It pulls everyone in. If you want to deal with cities like Mari, Babylon, or Ashur, you'd better speak their language. Worship their gods at least on weekends. And understand that when they say tribute, they mean Mitanni, like every empire that wants to stay on the guest list. Plays along. Your kings start writing diplomatic letters in Akkadian instead of Hurrian. Your tablets now contain phrases like "May your house be prosperous," like the sweet floodwaters of Enlil, which sounds romantic until you realize Enlil's last flood killed half of summer. Your temples adopt Mesopotamian architectural styles. Your nobles start wearing Babylonian robes. And your children, they're learning to write with reed styluses imported from Uruk. Cultural cross-contamination now with more gods. Let's talk pantheons. Mitanni's gods used to be local mountain spirits, weather lords, gender-fluid vengeance divinities. Now, You've got temples to Ishtar and Marduk popping up like theological chain restaurants. A priest from Nineveh visits and declares your storm god, basically the same as Adad. You nod while smiling, but internally you're screaming. He is not the same. Ours has 3 eagles and a boar sidekick. You alliterate Claude, but the lines blur. Anyway, Mitanni's storm gods start getting referred to by Babylonian names in treaties. Your scribes start copying Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, as if it's fan fiction they're not quite proud of. Even the courtiers start using Babylonian phrases like Kisu Inedukar, righteous throne, in everyday flattery. You try it once. It feels dirty. Meanwhile, in the archives, your job, once a poetic exercise in myth and memory, is now mostly paperwork. You record grain shipments, tax rolls, chariot inventory, and once a 2-page complaint about a missing sheep that escalates into what may legally qualify as a minor war. The tablet ends with, "Let it be known that Tiz Talu denies the goat was his, though it slept in his tent and bore his mark. May the gods judge this theft." You write it all down, because history is composed not just of kings and conquests, but goat theft and bruised egos. Bureaucracy, the final frontier. You now work under the chief record keeper of Washunani, a man named Bazu, who files complaints against his own inkpots when they misbehave. He's the embodiment of Mesopotamian influence. All titles, no tolerance. He once made a scribe rewrite an entire shipment manifest because he used the wrong form of 20. You hate him, but you've also started drinking the barley beer he brews behind the archive. So, Basu insists all records now follow the Babylonian column format, which is to say, overly neat, aggressively labeled, and longer than the Iliad. He also demands all official correspondence begin with, "To my lord, who sits in wisdom beneath the sky, may the gods grant 10,000 years of shade." You suggest hope you're well. Instead, he doesn't laugh. The real problem. You're getting good at it, and that's what haunts you, because once upon a time, you were a rider, a wild-eyed scribe on a chariot, dodging arrows and scribbling history with blood on your sleeves. Now, you're building filing systems, inventing seals, standardizing the vocabulary for urgent delivery versus urgent, but not really. You catch yourself saying things like, "We'll need 3 copies of that temple grant, one for the palace, one for the archives, and one for the gods." You sit up, late categorizing priestly donations by region, and wondering whether a jar of honey counts as high value or just sticky. You're not sure who you are anymore. But by Teshub's thunderous thighs, you're efficient. And then the letter comes. It's from Assyria. You unfold the clay carefully. The symbols are sharp, direct. No poetry, no perfume. To the scribes of Mitanni, the gods of Ashur, command remembrance. May your borders remain peaceful. May your cities remain yours. For now, you stare at it for a long time, because that's the other side of becoming more Mesopotamian. Eventually, you're no longer the rider. You're the road, and someone, somewhere, is already planning how to walk over you. A note in the margins. Night you write. Today, I copied a text 3 times. One for the king, one for the priest, one for the man who will conquer us. He may not know our language, but he will read these words and know we were more than shadow. You slip the tablet into your satchel. Tomorrow, you return to the archives. Tomorrow, you make more lists. But tonight, you remember how to write. Just for a moment, you're sitting in a smoky tavern on the edge of Washukani, chewing something that was advertised as roasted pigeon, but tastes suspiciously like overcooked sandal. Across from you, a bearded old man is arguing with a much younger bearded man about whether Hurrian was a gift from the gods or a prank pulled by a bored linguist with a grudge against vowels. You take another bite of mystery meat and try to follow the debate, because the problem with running an empire made up of Hurrians is well, the Hurrians. Who are the Hurrians? Let's start with the basics. You are one. Probably. Or at least you've claimed it on every census form, tax report, and job application so far. But defining Hurrian is like trying to define hipster in a city with 8 artisanal goat cheese shops. It's slippery. Hurrians are mountain folk, highlanders, wanderers from the north. They came down from the Zagros Mountains, speaking a language no one else could quite wrap their heads around, and built a civilization out of grit, stone, and a disturbingly intimate knowledge of goat anatomy. They don't worship like others. They don't speak like others. They don't fight like others. And yeah, somehow they've built this. Mitanni, linguistic gymnastics. Hurrian is a linguistic anomaly. You know this because you spend most of your days translating it into Akkadian. So the outside world doesn't think you're casting spells or choking on walnuts. It's agglutinative, complex, filled with cases, suffixes, and what scholars will one day call a delightful nightmare. In Hurrian, the word for king isn't just king. It's king who commands by divine right in this particular context, and might be having a good hair day. Some phrases can take an entire tablet to finish, and gods help you if you mix up the suffix for my lord with the one for your goat. The resulting confusion has led to at least one diplomatic incident and a marriage proposal that ended in tears. Religion. Choose your own myth. The Hurrians don't do organized religion. They do religion like a band does jazz, lots of improvisation, some divine screaming, and occasionally someone gets smacked with a tambourine. Sure, there's Teshub, the storm god, and Shoshka, who may or may not be your favorite fluid, gendered warrior love deity, who's probably flirting with someone right now. But beyond that, it's chaos, divine, glorious chaos. Local villages have local gods, many of whom are just regional versions of the same divine personality with different hobbies. In the south, Teshub rides a bull. In the north, he's riding the storm itself. In the hill country, he's just a cranky guy with a beard who throws rocks during storms. And they all exist. Somehow, law and disorder. Mitanni is a state, but the Hurrians, they're still tribes at heart. Every family has a chief, every region has a lord, and every lord thinks just temporarily lending power to the king. Loyalty is local, deep, fierce, complicated. You've seen it play out firsthand. A noble might swear allegiance to King Tashrata on Monday and lead a rebellion by Thursday because someone insulted his grandmother's loom at a wedding 10 years ago. There's no unifying text, no codified Hurrian law, just precedent, memory, and whoever yells the loudest during the trial. One of your scrolls from last month literally ends with judgment rendered. The goat is shared. The fence shall move. No curses may be spoken under moonlight. Case closed. You filed it under legal. Misk. Got the strength and the problem. And yet here's the rub. This chaos works. The Hurrians are impossible to control, but they are impossible to conquer. They don't break under pressure. They don't crumble when empires shift. They adapt, reshape, but survive. They fought off Hittites, held their ground against Assyria, flirted with Egypt, built Washkani with nothing but willpower and badly behaved horses. But their greatest strength is also the reason you're chewing on sandal meat while mediating a land dispute between two villages who both claim to have invented the wheel. The Hurrians are proud of their dialects, their hill gods, their family lines that go back 37 generations and include 3 mythical wolves and a rock with a name. They will not be ruled, only led, carefully, gently, while pretending it was their idea all along. A story from the streets. You leave the tavern as night falls. The streets of Washukani are humming. Children dart between market stalls. Old women toss herbs from balconies. Someone is singing in a dialect you barely understand. You pass a temple with an altar to Shoshka, freshly adorned with roses and a dagger. The scent of incense and grilled onions makes your stomach consider forgiveness. A young boy runs past, barefoot, carrying a tablet bigger than his chest. You stop him. What's that? He grins. My uncle says it's his family's land claim from before the flood. You glance at the tablet. It's just scribbles, but he's holding it like it's sacred, and maybe it is. You, the scribe still, back in your chambers, you draft tomorrow's report. The people remain spirited. The nobles argue. The goats multiply. Shoshka's priestess declared a new moon ceremony. Lord Haranu has challenged Lord Tilu to a ritual wrestling match over a shared pasture. Temple repairs are ongoing. The scribes have requested more tablets. We are out of patience, ink, and clean sandals. You sit back. You laugh. Because this is Mitanni. This is the Hurrian paradox. You don't rule them. You ride the wave. You document the madness. You honor the gods, bribe the priests, dodge the knives, and pray the archives don't collapse under the weight of unresolved family feuds. You build an empire out of smoke and stubbornness, and so far, it's still standing. It begins with a snake. Well, not the metaphorical kind, not betrayal in silk or lies in the garden, or gods hate you kind. No, this is a real slithering, hissing, fanged, angry piece of venomous muscle, currently curled up in your archive basket next to last month's tax records and a half-eaten fig. You freeze, because you've been through war, famine, and 4 types of royal marriages. But you were not trained for serpent diplomacy. Har comes running. He takes one look, nods grimly, and says, "It's a sign." A sign of what? You ask, because you were hoping for an accident or someone's lost pet. He just shrugs and says, "Snakes mean trouble." And boy, does he have no idea how right he is. Meet the cousins. Trouble arrives in the form of 2 cousins, technically nobles. More accurately, walking disasters in linen tunics. Lord Tilu of the Eastern Hills, tall, loud, claims to be descended from Teshub's personal chariot driver, known for throwing banquets that end in sword fights and lawsuits. Lord Haranu of the Western Tributaries. Shorter, richer, owns more goats than scent, believes treaties are suggestions, and that poisoning someone's fig tree isn't technically aggression. They are first cousins, and they hate each other. Unfortunately, they also own adjacent land. Even more unfortunately, that land is suddenly very valuable thanks to a new trade route passing through it, which means silver, power, Timmy, and excuses to call each other thieves in increasingly creative Hurrian slang. The treaty that wouldn't. Your job is to mediate, because the king is too busy writing Egypt another passive-aggressive letter about delayed gold shipments, and you're the only scribe in the capital who's neutral, literate, and not related to either lunatic. You meet both lords in the Hall of Stones, a lovely name for a room that contains 2 chairs, a cracked map, and several weapons no one's allowed to touch. Lord Tilu arrives first. He slaps the map, shouts "This is mine," and accuses Haranu of stealing 7 hills and 1 daughter. Oh, Haranu walks in 5 minutes later, casually drops a pouch of silver on the floor, and says, "That's rent for your mouth. It goes downhill from there. Snakes in the scrolls." You spend the next 2 weeks writing what historians will later call the dumbest treaty ever written. You outline boundaries in such precise language that it includes phrases like the westernmost flat rock that resembles a frog if viewed sideways. You include clauses about livestock sharing, temple donations, joint festivals, and a special arbitration clause in case someone gets bitten by another's herder. You include anti-poison language. Yes, that's right. You literally write, "No lord or relative of lord shall introduce or suggest toxins into food, drink, or sacrificial offerings unless mutually agreed upon in writing." God, you write that with a straight face. They sign it. You don't trust it. the real problem, because you know what no treaty can fix. Ego. These two aren't fighting over land. Not really. They're fighting over legacy. Over who gets to be remembered, whose statue will stand in the temple courtyard, who history will call protector of the southern flank, and who will be the guy who owned sheep. And legacy? That's dangerous. More dangerous than armies. More dangerous than famine. Legacy turns family into enemies. Something breaks. It happens at a festival. A religious one. Flowers, fire, drums. Everyone's drunk on fermented dates and divine approval. Tilu and Haranu are both there, standing a bit too close. You see it, a glance, a whisper, a goblet passed, a priest frowning. 2 hours later, Haranu collapses during a dance, frothing, twitching, foul, very, very, very poisoned. He doesn't die, not yet, but the message is loud, clear, and drenched in venom. The treaty is now a punchline. Washani reacts. The king is furious, not because they broke the treaty, but because they did it so badly, publicly, at a temple festival. The royal court explodes in chaos. One faction demands both lords be executed. Another wants exile. A third suggests letting the gods decide, which usually involves snakes. So, full circle, you're dragged into a midnight council. The vizier asks, who do we punish? You say, both. They stare. You clarify, if we punish one, the other becomes a hero. If we punish both, we reset the board. Tushrata nods. The next morning, both cousins are summoned, stripped of land, sent to opposite ends of the kingdom. Their lands, declared royal property. You get a promotion and a warning. Next time, make sure the treaty includes punishment by goats. Noted, you alone with the scrolls. That night, you sit by lamplight. You reread the treaty. You shake your head. You write, laws are made of words, but vengeance is written in silence. Blood is louder than brawn, and kinship is not peace. It is only proximity. You seal it, slide it into the archive, and make a note. Do not trust cousins, especially with hills. You've sent 3 letters. Beautiful, poetic, gold-dusted tablets, packed with every diplomatic trick you know. Flattery, friendship, shared enemies, a gentle reminder that you once hosted their prince during a thunderstorm. And Babylon? Nothing. Not a tablet, not a courier, not even a dead pigeon. Babylon, the moody ex. For a while, Mitanni and Babylon had a decent thing going. Trade flowed. Priests exchanged chants. There was a whole summer where you couldn't walk through Washkani without tripping over a Babylonian merchant selling genuine Mesopotamian perfumes that smelled like regret. Now Babylon's acting like it doesn't even remember your name. It's not just rude, it's dangerous. Because when Babylon stops responding, it usually means they're answering someone else. And you know exactly who that someone is. Assyria. The ghosting game. At first, you assume it's just late. Babylonian scribes are notoriously slow. Their writing system contains about 700 signs, half of which mean king, and the other half mean different king. But after the third unanswered letter, the vizier calls you into his chamber. He's pacing, which is terrifying. This is a man who considers blinking to be unnecessary movement. Then, they're avoiding us, he says. They're moving toward Ashur. He doesn't have to explain what that means, because Assyria, quiet, cold, calculating, has always been the shadow at your borders. A scribe's reconnaissance. You do what any rational Mitanni scribe would do. You go drinking, specifically with a Babylonian trader who owes you 2 favors and half a goat, over sour beer and suspicious olives. You extract the truth. Babylon has received envoys from Assyria. They're negotiating trade right. There's talk of military cooperation. You return to the palace, write a very calm report, and absolutely do not scream into a pillow. The king's mood sours. Tushratta does not take the news well. He doesn't shout. He doesn't fume. He orders a feast, which, in royal terms, is the political equivalent of smile for the guests while I load the crossbow. Babylon is officially declared in strategic recessment. Unofficially, they're dead to us. You're instructed to freeze all communications, redirect trade routes to bypass Babylonian merchants, write a new letter to Egypt. More flirtation, more gold requests. You write it, but it feels different because something has shifted. Babylon used to be a pillar of the world, a steady partner. Now it's a door that's been shut, and you're not sure if it'll ever open again. One last tablet. You don't send this one. You keep it in your chamber. It reads, "We once shared fire. Now you offer only smoke. If Assyria has your ear, may it whisper kindly, but remember, shadows are not friends, only shapes waiting to move." You slide it into your bag and wait for the storm. It starts, as these things often do, with a messenger who smells like fear and horse sweat. He arrives at the palace gate with a broken sandal, a bruised face, and the kind of urgent expression that makes you cancel lunch. You're summoned. The vizier hands you the tablet. It's short, pressed in haste, barely legible, but the message is clear. The Hittites have crossed the northern border, and just like that, they're back. Deja vu. You've fought the Hittites before. Everyone has. They're the ancient world's version of mold, persistent, invasive, and somehow always near damp grain. You tried diplomacy. You tried treaties. You even tried sending a royal cousin to marry their prince, who then mysteriously fell off a balcony. Didn't work, because the Hittites don't play games. They play siege. The town of Tikhana, the current crisis. A small fortress town called Tikhana. Not important on most maps. Barely defended. Populated by goat herders, potters, and one extremely unkillable grandmother who claims to have survived 5 different kings. but it's a trade junction, and the Hittites want it. Reports say they arrived at dawn. No declaration, no warning, just rolled up with 10 chariots and a battering ram made of disrespect. The War Council also. Snacks. By midday, the palace war room is full. Tushrata sits at the head, fingers steepled. His generals mutter over a sand map. Bait de show. You stand to the side, stylus ready, pretending not to eavesdrop aggressively. One general says, "We strike now." Another, "We wait." They want us to react. The vizier suggests sending a strongly worded letter. Tushrata says nothing. Then he looks at you. "What would history say we should do?" You blink. You were hoping to remain neutral today, but the room is watching. So you say, "History says when the Hittites knock, they're not asking permission." Tushrata smiles faintly. "Mobilize the chariots," he says. Back in the saddle. Within hours, the city is alive with motion. Chariot wheels creak. The spears are sharpened. Horses are rubbed with sacred oils and compliments. You find Shuru, your old chariot partner, by the stables, grinning like a man who has not aged a day, despite very clearly having a limp and a new eyebrow scar. "Did you miss me?" he says. You nod. "Because war is awful. But riding with Shuru, that's the one part you secretly missed." Tikana burns. You arrive at dawn. Smoke curls above the walls. The town hasn't fallen, but it's bruised. You ride through the outer fields, wheels slicing through churned mud, past shattered fences and dead silence. Then you see them, Hittite soldiers, clustered near the east gate. Their chariots are heavier, slower, but intimidating. You and your unit spread out. Shuru draws his bow. You whisper a prayer to whichever god isn't busy, and you charge. The clash, it's fast, brutal. The Hittites didn't expect Mitanni's cavalry this soon. They fall into disarray. Arrows fly, hooves crush. The sky turns to dust. Your chariot swerves. Shuru fires. You crash through their rear flank like the storm God himself handed you a flaming wheel and said, "Go nuts." By noon, it's over. The gate is retaken. Tikana still stands. Barely, but still. The aftermath. You walk the broken road. See the wounded, the ash, the scared children who look at you like you're made of thunder and fate. You write, "They came with fire. We answered with speed." The town did not fall, but something cracked beneath it. 'Cause it's not just about Tikana. It's the message. The Hittites are watching, and next time they might not knock. The first sign is silence. No trade caravans from the east, no border updates, no friendly notes from Ashur's court hinting at military exercises that are just for training. Not even a clay tablet to tell you their king sneezed. It's been 3 months. That's too long for Assyria. Because the thing about the Assyrian, they never just disappear. They vanish strategically. You know they're breathing. Assyria is the quiet neighbor with sharp elbows. They don't bluster like the Hittites or flirt like Egypt. They're colder, methodical. If Babylon is your moody ex and Hatti is your punchy cousin, Assyria is the neighbor who trims their hedges with a dagger and always seems to be measuring your yard for future annexation. So when they stop sending messengers, you worry, because they're definitely still watching. You send a tablet anyway. Standard greeting, overly formal, drenched in subtext. To the mighty king of Ashur, may your borders be blessed, and your granaries abundant. We note your silence. May it not signal unrest, but only deep reflection. It's polite code for, are you planning something or just ignoring us? Like Babylon did before things got weird? You send it and wait. The answer comes in hoofbeats, but not from a courier, from a refugee. He's hurrying, dust covered, bleeding. Says his village east of the Tigris was cleansed. You ask what he means. Assyrians came, he says. No flags, no warning, just order, like they already owned the place. And just like that, you realize they've moved in, quietly, surgically, with that same unnerving precision they use to arrange funerals and store battle axes alphabetically. Cartography and panic. You call for map. You call for scribes. You call for wine. Then you circle the towns that have gone silent. The trade outposts that postpone deliveries. The messengers who never returned. They form a line. A neat little path of quiet acquisitions that snakes its way from the northeast toward Mitanni's vulnerable flank. And now they're close. Not swords drawn close, but we have a plan, and you're in it close. The king's patience wears thin. Tushrata is pacing again. He asks, should we threaten? You shake your head. Assyria doesn't respond to threats. They respond to weakness. He asks, should we send gifts? You shrug. They'll take the gifts and keep moving. He asks, should we strike first? Now that's the question, and the terrifying answer is maybe. But you wait, because striking first means war, and war with Assyria isn't quick. It's not a clash of chariots. It's a slow, grinding, administrative disassembly of your kingdom. Assyria fights like a tax audit. Thorough, devastating, and somehow always within the rules. So, instead, you suggest diplomacy. One last time, you write to the great king who sees in silence. We offer peace. We offer terms. We offer roads. Do not mistake our ink for hesitation. We have chariots and patience. You seal it. You send it. But in your gut, you know it's already too late. Washkani is quiet, not silent, just quieter than it used to be. The kind of quiet that fills the space when something has shifted. But no one dares say it aloud. The streets still hum. The market's still open. The priests still chant at sunrise like nothing is wrong. But everyone walks a little faster, laughs a little softer, and watches the palace windows as if the bricks might whisper secrets. Because, while the city still stands, the throne beneath it trembles. Tushrata has changed. He doesn't laugh anymore. Not really. He nods. He listens. He speaks in careful, weighed phrases that sound like he's already rewriting them in his head for the next king to read. He still holds court, still gives orders, still writes Egypt with flowery diplomacy and increasingly desperate compliments. You recently compared Pharaoh's hair to the golden reeds of the Nile, cradling morning light. You hate yourself, but behind the performance, he's worried about Babylon. Me. To curse about Assyria, about the chariot corps hemorrhaging funds, and the temple taxes being quietly adjusted by local lords, about the fact that fewer nobles bow now, and more of them watch. Cracks in the stone, it starts small. One noble delays sending grain, another fuses a marriage alliance. A border town swears loyalty to both Mitanni and Ashur, whatever that means. Your reports pile up. Temple unrest in the south. A chariot unit defected, joined a warband calling itself Sons of the Old Mountain. Gold deliveries from Egypt are late. Again. And then there's the letter from a Mitanni prince to Shrata's own cousin offering to help stabilize the throne. If the king were to step back for the good of the realm. You read it twice. The handwriting is too neat. The message is clear. A challenge has begun. You try to warn him. You meet Tishrata at dusk. He's alone in the garden, hands clasped behind his back, watching the palace walls glow orange in the fading light. You offer a scroll. He doesn't read it. I know, he says. You ask if he has a plan. He says loyalty can be bought, but it's never owned. You ask if he'll strike first. He doesn't answer. Instead, he asks, do you believe in fate? You say no. You believe in timing, grain supplies, and how quickly a scribe can run with a secret. He smiles. Just once, just barely. The earth beneath. Weeks pass. The city still stands. The banners still fly. But you feel it now like a rumble beneath your sandals. Not war. Not yet. But the prelude to war. The shifting of allegiances. The tightening of ropes around a crown no longer universally feared. Your fellow scribes argue in whispers. The archives are now guarded by soldiers. One priest flees. Another is arrested. A messenger arrives, bloodied, carrying word of a noble revolt in the north. And the army, it hesitates. You were right. The throne does not crack in battle. It softens under smiles. It sags under silence. When it falls, it will not shatter. It will slip into the sand, like it was never there at all. You seal the tablet, place it among the records, and wonder how much longer you'll still be here to write the next one. It begins, as exile often does, with an overly polite guard. waking you up before sunrise and calling you honored guest, which is royal code for pack your things. You're being politically ghosted. You're not alone. Several of you scribes, advisors, a priest with suspiciously expensive sandals are gathered quietly in the outer court, surrounded by soldiers pretending not to listen. There are no accusations, no trials, no speeches, just a scroll bearing the king's seal and one elegant line. A necessary distance preserves peace, which sounds noble, but feels a lot like being shoved out of a burning house because you coughed too close to the drapes. The road to nowhere. They don't send you far. A modest villa, technically still in Mitanni territory, overlooking a dry riverbed, one temple, and a population of goats who stare at you like they've seen things. It's not a prison, but it's not freedom. It's political storage, somewhere to keep inconvenient minds until the winds shift. You have writing supplies. You have wine for now. You have a window. And of course you have your thoughts. Too many of them. Who gets exiled? That's the real question, isn't it? Not the loud traitors. Not the knife wielders or palace arsonists. No, they get executed. You get exiled because you're clever, because you saw too much, because you wrote everything down. You're not dangerous, not directly. You're just proof. And in kingdoms like this, proof is deadly. Letters you don't send. You write them anyway. One to Shuru, wherever he is, asking if he still rides, or if the chariot broke without you. One to Tashrata, filled with questions you'll never dare ask. One to yourself, just to remember who you were before silence became a profession. You seal them and never send them, because exile teaches you the first rule of survival. Don't be remembered until it's safe again. Time slips differently now. The days blur. You walk the perimeter. You listen to the wind. You reorganize your scrolls by theme, then by bitterness. Occasionally, a local farmer brings you gossip, always indirect. Lots of soldiers moving west. Temples closed again. No incense for weeks. Heard the king's cousin is back in the capital. You nod, offer a coin, and write it all down. Because even now, even here, you're still recording. That's the habit that never leaves. A visitor. One evening, as dusk swallows the hills, someone knocks. Not a guard, not a peasant, a woman, well dressed, sandaled, unfamiliar. She enters, uninvited, and says, "The throne tilts." But it hasn't fallen yet. You ask who sent her. She smiles. No one, but many are watching. And you're still useful. Just not yet. She leaves something on your table, a scroll case, sealed, unmarked. Then she disappears into the shadows, like a very polite omen. You, again. You don't open the scroll right away. Instead, you write, "I am still here," and exile is not absence. It is waiting, dressed in silence. I will not move. I will not beg. But when the storm passes, let them remember I never stopped writing. You tuck the tablet into the case, and for the first time in weeks, you feel ready. You knew it was coming. Egypt was always a little fickle. One day it's gold-plated love letters and marriage alliances. The next, silence. Total, oppressive, awkward silence. Like the kind where you're pretty sure they saw your message, just chose to not respond right now. The last letter. You wrote the last tablet 3 weeks ago. Beautifully worded, painstakingly etched. You even included a poem comparing Pharaoh's reign to the scent of lotus on dawn's first breeze. Gross? A little. Effective, usually. But this time, no reply. You double-checked the courier. He arrived, delivered, was offered dates, and left unharmed. He swears the scroll was received. And then, nothing. No gold, no linen, not even a polite rejection papyrus. Washkani notices. The palace pretends it's fine. Official stance. The pharaoh is meditating in divine silence on a moon. Official stance. The king hasn't slept, and the vizier keeps triple checking the royal inventory for missing gold. You start hearing whispers. Egypt's distracted. They found new allies. Pharaoh's son favors Kadesh now. Maybe they've grown tired of horses, which is hilarious, because you invented Bronze Age horsepower. Damage control. Tushrata orders another letter. You're told to make it longer, sweeter, more desperate, without looking desperate. So you write, brother of my soul, son of my years, whose glory binds our lands like reeds upon the river. Is your silence a storm waiting to pass? Or is your chariot turned from our road? You seal it, you send it, and still no answer. Why? It hurts, because Egypt wasn't just an ally. Egypt was insurance against the Hittites, against Assyria, against the slowly eroding confidence in the throne. They were your mirror, reflecting your importance back at you. Every gift, every bride, every envoy was proof that Mitanni mattered. Without that reflection, you start to feel invisible. The collapse is quiet. A week later, the Egyptian quarter in the capital closes. Their priests leave. Their traders vanish. Their scribes stop requesting copies of your treaties. No fanfare, no ceremony, just absence, like they were never there. You sit with it. In exile, you hear the news late, but you still feel it. You write. We called them brother. They offered gold. We offered blood. They offered silence. And silence is heavier than betrayal. You store the tablet next to the others, the ones Egypt used to reply to. At first, it's small things. A mapmaker stops labeling Mitanni cities in fresh ink. A Babylonian scribe refers to you as a former power. One of your royal tablets is returned unread from a minor kingdom that used to beg for your protection. No insults, no war declarations. Just erasure. You're still standing, still breathing, but history has moved on. And it didn't bother to tell you. The world gets louder without you. Assyria builds. Hatti expands. Egypt throws weddings like they're going out of style. And Mitanni is still writing letters. You're watching it happen from the outside now. From exile. From the edge of relevance. The traitors who once named your king first now name him last. If at all, your gods are invoked less. Your roads once praised are simply avoided. Like you're a ruin with a good view. The archive shrinks. In the capital, the scribes still write, but they use less clay, fewer copies. They stop archiving everything. Even you used to document every chariot patrol, every shipment, every royal sneeze. Now the scrolls are thinner, the ink is drier, and no one records the wind. The name game. One day, a southern diplomat arrives. He refers to you not as Mitanni, but as Narin, the old name, a name used when your people were still climbing hills and praying to gods that had no temples. You correct him. He smiles, says, yes, but that's what our records call you now. You make a note of it. You don't correct the next diplomat. The stories begin to twist. You hear the whispers that Mitanni was always a client state, that your chariots were learned from the Hittites, that your kings were too soft, too trusting, too married to Egypt. One merchant even claims Mitanni's gods were borrowed from Assyria. You almost hit him with a stylus. But what's the point? It's not about what's true. It's about who gets to write the next version. You try one more time. You write a history, not for kings, not for priests, just for whoever finds it. You carve it deep, carefully, line after line. We were fast. We were proud. We burned like bronze in morning sun. And if they forget, then let the dust carry this. Mitanni was. You seal it. You bury it beneath a broken foundation stone. And you hope one day someone will read it. The stables are nearly empty now. No more rows of sleek, restless stallions. No more grooms whistling over currycombs. No more smell of oil and sweat and churned up earth before dawn. Just one old horse standing in the shade. And even he seems to know the kingdom is ending. The echo of hooves. You remember when the sound of hooves was the heartbeat of Mitanni. Chariots lined the courtyards. Horses were sacred, groomed like gods, fed like kings. The war stallions had names etched in clay, pedigrees longer than most noble lineages. Now, the last chariot you saw was being used to carry onions. The armies being reduced to border patrols and ceremonial parades that no one watches. And the horse, his name is Ashru. He's blind in one eye, limps slightly, but still holds his head like he was bred for war. You feed him quietly. You don't speak. You just listen. The whisper, it's not a sound, really. It's a feeling, a memory in motion. You run your hand along his flank, tracing old scars, one from a battle by the river, one from a runaway cart, one from God's know what. Ashru turns his head, and for just a moment, you feel it. The thunder, the open plains, the wind tearing through your tunic, the scream of a bowstring, and the roar of 1,000 hooves. Mitanni, still there, somewhere in the blood of this horse. Even if the kings forget, a visitor from the east, a messenger, arrives, young, nervous, wearing Assyrian colors. He brings a letter from Ashur. It begins, "To the guardians of the past, not kings, not allies, not even subjects. Guardians." It's a polite way of saying relics. The letter is respectful, but cold. It offers terms. Peaceful transition. Unforgettable transition. Preservation of cultural asset. Chariot horses to be transferred to Ashur. You laugh out loud at that one. Ashur snorts. You swear it's on purpose. The goodbye no one records. That night, you sit beside the old horse. You light no fire. You keep no record. Because this isn't for the archives. This is for you. You press your forehead to Ashru's and whisper. You carried kings. You outran war. You were the storm beneath us. And when we rode, we were gods. Ashru doesn't reply, but in the stillness, you feel him exhale, like he understands, like he remembers. And then, just you. The next morning, they come to collect the last horse. You say no. You don't shout. You don't fight. You just stand beside him and say, "Tell Ashur we kept one thing, not out of pride, but because he remembered when we were fast." They leave. Ashur stays. You stay. And for the first time in weeks, you smile. He hasn't fallen fire. Not at first. Washkani doesn't go up in smoke or drown beneath swords. It fades softly, like the last breath before sleep, like the echo of hoofs long after the chariots have gone. The day the banners come down, you're there when it happens. The Assyrians don't storm the gates. They walk through them invited. Technically, a peaceful handover secured by the remaining nobles, who traded loyalty for survival and were just relieved nobody got flayed. They wear iron-studded cloaks. Their boots thump like judgment. They don't look around much. They already know the layout. They've seen the maps. They've read the tablets. Hell, you probably wrote half of them. They don't touch the temples. Not right away. They let the priests finish morning chants. They let Shoshka's statue stay in place briefly. They let the illusion of continuity stretch just enough to keep the people calm. But you see it. Behind the restraint, ownership. They nod at everything like it's already catalogued. Because it is. Your archive. Rebranded. They don't burn your scrolls. They refile them. Your records are now historic context. Your treaties are legacy documents. Your war reports, useful insights into outdated tactics. The head Assyrian scribe, a man with a voice like wet parchment, asks if you'll help transition the record-keeping apparatus. You nod, because you've learned. Survivors don't say no. The throne room, empty. Tushrata is gone. No public trial. No assassination. Just some say he fled. Some say he's dead. Some say he struck a deal and lives in some quiet corner of Usher, sipping date wine and pretending he was never a king. The throne itself removed, replaced with a seal of Ashur's eagle arms outstretched, claws ready. The tiles are scrubbed, the murals are painted over. Even the scent is different now, no incense, just iron. You are not asked to write new decrees, to carve new oaths, to praise new kings. They have their own scribes, sleeker, harsher, with a way of writing your name like it's already forgotten. You're given a corner desk. You're not dismissed, but you're no longer necessary. Ashru doesn't understand. The old horse waits for you each morning. He still perks up when he hears your sandals, still snorts when you bring figs, still watches the gates like waiting for the others to return. You brush his flank. He leans into it. You whisper. They took the walls. They took the words. But they didn't take this. And for a moment, you believe it. One final tablet. You write it late, alone, unsealed. No title. No request. No audience. Just a record. This was Mitanni. We rode like fire. We spoke in wind. Our cities were carved in dust, and our pride built in silence. We stood while others blinked, and though our banners fall, the hoofprint remains. You don't hide it. You place it at the gate. Let the next empire read it. Let them know. We were here, even under their boots. End. Mitanni writes no more. But it was fast while it lasted.